and welcome to NDTV Auto. I have a very special guest with me today, Avik Chattopadhyay. Avik has been a brand consultant with various automobile companies. He was earlier with Maruti, Volkswagen, and has also been a consultant with an Anglo-Saxon company as well. And now he's in the process of setting up India's first dedicated automobile design college. So we will talk more about it. And Avik, first of all, congratulations on this process of starting India's first specifically focusing on automobile design college. Now, I want to first go back to your journey. Tell us, how did it all start? I think you have now spent about 22 years in Indian automobile industry.
Yeah, I've been keeping myself busy for close to 33, 34 years now, of which I was employed for around 23 years. Okay, primarily in the automotive field, and that also happened purely because, being the only child in the family, you have a lot of spare time just to yourself, and when you live in the cantonment areas where there are very few friends, so you want to do things by yourself. So I guess my mother realized when I was a little kid that outside of her storytelling and outside of the little encyclopedia that she would buy for me, giving me little model cars to play with was possibly one way she would keep me busy while she could do her own stuff. So that's how it all started, and many of us actually as kids, we start off by playing with, what we used to typically call when we were kids as dinky cars.
Yes.
Yeah. Little scale model cars, we used to bash them around, throw them on the wall, hit them against each other and that was typically what I was doing. But then I slowly realized that I liked them. Okay. But my academic career was never engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was to do with humanities and eventually graduation in economics, and then I did my MBA. And while I was doing my MBA, so in an MBA you have to do a summer internship. Okay, so by the time my father, he was a bureaucrat, so he had moved back to Delhi, and so I thought, okay, great. So if I have to do my internship, why not stay at home and try to see if I can do it in Maruti. Okay, and Maruti was a young company. It had started in 1983 and this was 1990. And I said, let me try. So went and I applied by myself. Okay, didn't go through the campus. Okay, and the people in Maruti said, okay, yeah, fine, come along.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was anyway doing my MBA in Industrial Relations and Labor Laws.
And which college was this?
This was XLRI, Jamshedpur. Okay. And doing it in Industrial Relations. So I said, yeah, that time I was like the typical jhola wala. Okay, so and I said, labor ke liye kaam karunga, workers ke liye kaam karunga. And I said, okay, I'll do my project on the shop floor.
Yeah.
Very good. Then there was something that happened when I was doing my internship, which told me that I need to work here. Okay. Now, what Maruti does is, or I don't know if it does it even now, but then you used to have short breaks on the assembly line. And they used to be, if I'm not too wrong, 5-minute breaks. Okay.
And how far apart?
Maybe an hour apart or something like that. So here I was watching at the assembly line from the mezzanine. Okay. You could watch down at the assembly line from the mezzanine. And maybe 4 minutes had passed, or maybe 4.5 minutes had gone. And this worker lit a cigarette. Okay. That time you were allowed to smoke on the side of the assembly line. Okay. At the assembly point. Tables and chairs are parked there. He lit a cigarette and then the siren rang. 5 minutes. He might have taken just 2 puffs. He immediately stopped the cigarette and he went to his line, and that really, really inspired me. I said, this is where I want to work, because this is like self-motivated people in this organization.
Yeah.
Okay, whether you call it Japanese management or Indian management, whatever, but this is self-management.
They were motivated enough to.
Exactly. So he didn't take a third puff. Okay. Siren, cigarette off, back to his own station. I said, I need to be here. Because if I need to start my management life,
Yeah.
this possibly is the best place. So it was a great combination. So it was this work ethos and then cars, right? And luckily I did a good project and Maruti told me, okay, once you pass out, come back.
Okay.
Okay, but my career completely changed because the person who, you still had to go through the interview process. So when you went through the interview process, the person who came was the head of marketing and sales. Okay, and he told me, yeah, you've got an offer, but I'll allow you to come in only if you join sales and marketing. And I told him, sir, with due respect, I'm specializing in industrial relations and labor laws. So he looked at me and he said, so you think you can manage people? I said, I don't know whether I can manage people, but at least I know I am being trained to manage people. Then this was the second, point of, let's say, truth hitting you. So he looked at me and said, young man, if you think you can manage people on the shop floor, you'll be able to manage people in the showrooms. Okay? So I want you to join sales and marketing. That was Mr. D.S. Gupta, who then became the first MD of TACO, Tata Auto Components, and then of course had a terrific career of himself. And that's how I started my journey in sales and marketing.
Oh, wow,
Okay,
such a twist and turn.
twists and turns, absolutely.
But one thing remains the same, that you wanted to do automobiles.
Yeah, I wanted to be in that world because I just loved the mechanical and the design and the aesthetic and everything coming together. And it's like one piece of, or let's say it's like one physical entity which not only brings joy to the individual, but to the family, and also brings a huge amount of pride to the nation.
Yeah.
Okay, so to me, this was the sector. And thankfully, it was not very popular. Okay, at that time.
Back then, yeah.
Okay, at that point of time. So not too many MBAs wanted to join the automobile industry. They were like banking, FMCG, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Coates VLA. I said, very good. Okay, so my path is very clear here. Okay.
But actually, I've seen this in MBAs. They don't want to generally join manufacturing
No, they don't.
based organizations. They're more into finance or more service oriented. Maybe it's the Indian economy, that's how it is. But I have not seen anybody say that I want to go in a manufacturing sector. I have also done my MBA, but
Yeah.
I don't think anybody aspire to be a part of manufacturing sector.
True, even now.
Yeah.
Even now. For example, Maruti does not even go to the MBA institutes. I mean, at least the top MBA institutes. Okay, which is sad. But Maruti's logic is that, listen, we go and get all these MBAs who think no less of themselves, from the IIMs and XLRIs and all these, all these worlds of their own. They come here, they stay here for 2-3 years, okay, throw their weight around, actually are not the most helpful, okay, because they've got huge egos, and then they leave. So we end up investing 2 to 3 years in them, and then they're leaving.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
Well, actually, come to think of it, in at least couple of these big companies, either Maruti, Tata, or Mahindra, we have seen people who have worked there for all their lifetimes.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the other thing. And I guess, as you very rightly said, the wiring, the emotional wiring of manufacturing is very different from the emotional wiring of, say, FMCG and banking and finance.
Even IT.
IT and even white goods.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're always seen as, it's fast moving, white goods, more competitive, little realizing that the automotive industry is possibly the most competitive that you can actually come across in any economy in any part of the world. Okay. I always took pride. Okay. My little egoistic pride was in, telling my colleagues that, you need to sell kilos and kilos of detergents.
Yeah.
okay, but I can sell just one car and get the same revenue,
Yeah.
right? Which wasn't the right thing to do, but that was like my way of possibly giving them back. That what are you doing? You're basically selling soap. That's what you're doing. Okay, I'm actually selling something which can change the country. So that was my trip.
Okay, I want to understand how has your experience been working with several different brands? How are the cultures different? How is Maruti's cultures different from say Volkswagen's?
Oh, very different. And I really, I guess that's been one of my biggest learnings. Working in different cultures. So started off in the Japanese culture, okay, and then when I moved into the oil industry, so I worked for companies like Caltex and Exxon Mobil, which were classic American culture, right? Um, so I worked with the Japanese, I worked with the Americans, I worked with the Germans, I worked with the French, I worked with the Spanish, and I worked with Indians, right? And each has actually taught me a lot. The first that they've taught me is do not prejudge, do not jump to conclusions. Okay, learn to be patient and understand the culture before you start trashing it. Uh, but it's also taught me that cultures are cultures. Okay, and as someone said, culture eats strategy for breakfast every morning. Okay, if you do not understand the culture, if you are not empathetic with the culture and work accordingly, your best of strategies will not work. And that's what I have actually experienced in working with the Japanese, vis-a-vis the Americans, vis-a-vis the Germans, vis-a-vis the French.
Okay, what according to you is the starkest change or starkest difference between all of these?
The Japanese are flat. Okay, your operating culture is very flat. It's like this room. Okay, very very flat. Even your director actually sits outside in the hall. Interestingly, when I joined, only the stenographers actually had rooms in Maruti.
And what was
Okay.
the logic for that?
Because they need to do stuff which is confidential,
Oh,
right? But the director is to be sitting outside in the hall, okay, with you. So the Japanese are operationally very flat. Otherwise, theocratically extremely hierarchical.
yeah, that's what I've heard. I was actually getting surprised.
Extremely hierarchical, theocratically. But when you're operating in teams, they want the teams to be flat, okay? Because they want access, they want openness. That's how that society is structured, which is very different from an Indian organization where the moment you're a manager, you want your room.
Cabin.
Yeah, you want a cabin, you want someone serving you water,
Definitely.
tea, and so on. There's nothing of that sort. Okay. The Americans are, when you work in an American organization, you actually realize why they are where they are, which is why they are so ubiquitous, why they are so successful. They absorb all the cultures, okay, very quickly, right? They're truly internationalized. The Japs are not very internationalized. Okay, they're still Japanese.
Inward looking.
I wouldn't say inward, but they are maybe a bit xenophobic. Maybe a bit xenophobic. They don't really believe in the gaijin. The gaijin is the outsider, the non-Japanese. Okay, which I guess is a bit of a problem that Gon-san had when he was heading Nissan
Yes.
and then coming back to Renault.
Yeah.
You would have very few un-Japanese organizations. Okay, and to me, there are only 3 of them in the world. There's Nintendo, there's Sony, there's Honda. These are 3 truly un-Japanese, so they're truly multinational. Okay, all the others are Japanese cross-nationals, whereas the Americans are truly multinational. Okay, because that's how the US has been built. People from different races and cultures have come in over centuries, settled down there, proven themselves, gone ahead and done stuff. Okay, so whether it's a Dara Khushro Shahi heading Uber, it doesn't matter that he's Persian, but it's American.
But now they also are complaining about it, right?
They're complaining about it at the bottom of the pyramid, not at the top of the pyramid. They're complaining about at the bottom of the pyramid because the bottom of the pyramid has lost jobs. Because suddenly you thought those jobs were menial for me. So
Yeah.
I don't want to make buttons. I don't want to make shoes. Let China make it or let any other country make it. Okay, I'm in for the big stuff, right? Have you ever had the problem in auto? No, because auto is big stuff. Auto is status.
Yeah.
Okay, I work for General Motors. I work for Ford, or I work for Chrysler.
But then their company suffered, and then eventually everybody else suffered, and they did not have those. They did not have those GM jobs anymore, those Ford jobs anymore. They had few.
Because the moment you stopped making shoes and you stopped making T-shirts and you stopped making track pants and you stopped making stuff in the billions, you didn't have money to buy
So
cars.
it starts impacting your pocket because you're
You don't
only
have money to
spending,
buy
you're
cars.
not buying.
And if you're not buying enough
earning.
cars, I'm not making enough cars. If I'm not making enough cars, I don't need enough those number of workers.
Yeah.
And workers start losing jobs.
Yeah.
So development happens from the bottom of the pyramid. Okay, very, very, very simply. So that's what I saw among the Americans. Truly, truly international. And however, you may not like the American state, but the American culture,
Yeah.
okay, they know what globalization means.
And they are, till the time we have known, if we don't think about last few years, they have been a very meritocracy dependent country. They were always putting merit first. If you deserved it, you deserved it.
True. I mean, you had your politics, but then, but
That's
you're
what
right.
I say. Politics aside.
Yeah, but politics means even politics in organizations. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, for example, for someone like Fareed Zakaria to reach where he has,
Yeah.
okay, for someone like Dara Khosrowshahi to reach where he has, for someone like Luciano Noto, who's an Italian immigrant, to be the boss of Mobil. Okay, now this
There are
tells
many
you,
stories, which was American dream.
that is
was
the American dream.
Yeah.
That is the dream.
Yeah.
Okay, the dream does come with its negatives, but that's the dream.
Yeah.
Okay, cut to the Europeans. Okay, the Europeans are either colonials or they're neo-colonials.
Okay.
So Germany was never a colonizer. Okay, but Germany is like they behave now like the new colonials. Okay.
We know it all.
We know it all. We've done this, we've done that. The others are inferior. The moment you get into that, you're in serious trouble. Okay? They are brilliant people, obsessive with quality, the same as the Japanese. Obsessive with quality, very different ways of approaching a problem. Okay, the Occidental versus the Oriental, right? But hugely obsessive, right? With anything that they do. This has got to be, okay, this wall should last me for 27 years. Okay, now you may think, I don't like this. In 3 years, I'm anyway going to repaint it. Germans say, no, it's going to last for 27 years. You can't repaint it. Because it's been engineered for 27 years. Okay, there'll not even be a crack. You say, dude, I don't like the background after 3 years. I want to change it. No, you can't. I have put in all my engineering into it for 27 years. It's going to last for 27 years. After 27 years, change it.
The only difference is that Japanese will make it at 1/10 of the price that Germany will make it. German will also last and Japanese will also last. But Japanese focus is, Japanese engineering is always focusing towards being frugal because they come from a background of getting less resources, having less resources.
Absolute constraints.
Yeah.
So that's the way the Germans are. Brilliant as individuals. Volkswagen, that was my last employer. I have no qualms in saying I quit them before they could actually sack me. Okay, it was as simple as that. I mean, the relationship was so bad.
Oh, really?
But when I joined Volkswagen as a kid, I still remember I was in class 5 and I used to see this Karman Ghia passing me every morning on Ring Road in Delhi.
Yeah.
And I used to say, I need to work in that organization that makes that car. And when I finally joined it in 2013, it was actually a high point of my life that I joined Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Awesome. What a brand to work for. Yeah. It's an amazing brand. But to me, again, it's the cultural mismatch, I guess, that happened. right? I mean, they are like super hierarchical, and they are arrogant, or they were arrogant. Today's Volkswagen is not that arrogant because they've actually, unfortunately, had to go through very, very bad phases, Dieselgate, and then currently, a stage when you need to close down your plants, which is not what you want to do, but they were super, super arrogant. I'll give you a, it's like a tragicomic instance. So we used to have our annual product planning meetings in Wolfsburg. Okay, so I was sitting next to the then the president of Volkswagen US, Jonathan Browning. Okay, I think he left before Dieselgate, thankfully. So we were discussing, and I guess he was chatting with me because I was possibly the only guy there who was speaking English. So, but anyway, so we were chatting, and then so he asked me, "So how old are you in the company?" I said, 7-8 months. He said, "Oh, you're lucky. So I've been here for long." And then he said that, I've been asking these guys to increase the size of the cup holders in the Jetta because the Americans, they have this habit of taking the
Big
1
cups.
ounce coffee and a croissant and driving to work.
Everything is XL size in US.
That's the way they are.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're driving long distances. So I said, "Yeah, and?" He says, "You never had a large cup holder." So I said, "Why?" "Because the engineers tell me ask the Americans to drink less coffee."
Well, in India also they did not manufacture for India for the longest time, and then only they had to ultimately manufacture and design for India, and then only they saw some bit of success.
True.
Yeah.
So that's how the Germans are, right? If you see the French, okay, that was possibly one of the loveliest times I had in the industry, working in Peugeot. Awesome people, amazing people. I guess also because in terms of our habits, the Bengalis and the French are quite similar. We just love to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, okay, without even deciding as to what would be the outcome. But they were truly creative people. Okay, so everything about them was about, will it look nice? Okay, will it be aesthetically pleasing? Right? And they used to always ask themselves a question, would I buy it for myself? Okay, so here was Volkswagen, the headquarters, and you never got to actually meet the chairman, right? And that building, we used to jokingly call it the Gurdwara. So सामने से माथा टेक के जाते थे, अंदर घुसने का permission नहीं था. Okay. So I'm just telling you the difference between the Germans and the French way of thinking in an organization. Never got to meet Mr. Winterkorn, who was the chairman, right? In Peugeot, the headquarters, I was there for some time in Paris. I was staying there, working there. Thierry Peugeot, who was the chairman, his room, the door was always open. Always open. Thierry's door was never closed.
Yeah.
Okay, and he had a secretary, okay, pleasing lady, and her door was always open. So she would be working at her desk, and if you just stood there, she would look up and say, "Can I help you? You want to meet Thierry? Yeah, walk in." It was as simple as that.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one. Now, it tells you about the cultures. The cultures. Secondly, when I had my employee card in Volkswagen, okay, I had limited access to which all places I could go to, and in headquarters, I had limited access as to where all I could go.
Second floor, third floor, not allowed.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Floor,
Not allowed here, not allowed there. This, you need to take special permission. My employee card in PSA would allow me to go anywhere, just anywhere. Okay, so when I was actually entering the product development center in Vélizy, which is highly confidential, the same card. So I asked my boss that, "Frederick, you're an employee.
Yeah.
Why would you need different cards? You're responsible." Just go ahead.
These French looks very exciting to work
Yeah.
with.
But the French, again, they themselves laugh at themselves, saying, there's this saying among the French, when in doubt, get out. Okay? Which is why you don't see French organizations being as ambitious
Yeah.
or as aggressive as the Germans are, or the Japanese are, or the Koreans are. Which is why Stellantis is where it is today in India. Okay? Because it's like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. By the time 2 years are over, you are going back to France. Okay, and you said, okay, fine, I've seen the Taj Mahal, I've been to Goa, let me go back now.
But I would also say that they have not stuck to their ethos of course, their cars look good from outside, but interiors, what they're doing with their interiors.
Again,
Citroën.
yes, I agree with you completely. I mean, if you, and that I guess applies to any culture,
Yeah.
any culture, right? Which is why I said, culture eats strategy for breakfast every morning. If you are running away from your ethos, or if you're diluting your basic DNA, you will not be successful.
Yeah.
And that's the reason actually why so many of these brands in India, in spite of India being such a large market, not just for cars, two-wheelers, everything combined, okay? Why so many brands actually keep floundering.
Yeah.
They don't even reach 5% market share. Forget about 10% market share.
Okay, now I want to ask you, how is Indian companies' culture different than all that you have seen till now?
Well, the Indian organizations, I worked with Apollo Tires, okay, which again to me is a very unique organization, right? It's run by North Indians, full of South Indians, okay, and a liberal sprinkling of Bengalis, right? It's a very unique ecosystem.
So
that
a
they've created.
multicultural organization
It's
in itself.
again multicultural, okay, and now because Apollo is also a global organization, right? They're in Europe and in the US, so
They're the largest tire manufacturer in the world.
so very easily, they absorb whatever is good from different parts of the world, right? So whether it's the French or the Germans or the English or the Americans or the Chinese, okay, they absorb all that. And I guess that is really the hallmark of a successful organization in today and tomorrow's world. Okay, where you stay core to your own DNA, but you create your own organizational culture. But it's like nothing is really excluded. Okay, if you really want to operate, even in India, if you want
Be
to
a
operate,
sponge, basically.
be a sponge, absorb things, and like a sponge also sheds excess water. Okay, shed whatever is excess, right? It's like in India. Okay, so if you are catering to the South, you need to understand the cultural ethos of the South, which is very different from the East, from the North, from the West, from the Central.
Yeah.
Even in the North, it's different kinds of people, right? And so India itself,
There is no one North, one South, one East, one West.
Exactly. And when people talk about there is an India and there is a Bharat, I strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Okay, there is no concept of there's an India and there's a Bharat. Okay, there's like this one unique ecosystem that we have. In fact, even Article 1 of our Constitution says India, that is Bharat.
Yeah.
Okay, so way back, those people had the sagacity to realize that there is no one India and there's no one Bharat. It's all together.
Yeah.
And as you correctly said, so the way I would go ahead and say sell my products in ETA would be very, very different from if I were to go to Erode and sell my products. Same product, same country, but very, very different cultural contexts.
Okay, now let's come back to the present and talk about what are you planning to do now? A design school or
Yes.
completely focused on automobiles.
Right.
What is the thought behind it?
Okay, the thought, it's more an outside-in approach that I had. So I had this urge to give back to the industry, okay, because it's a significant part of who I am today is because of the industry. right? And in the process, if I can actually build something for the nation, awesome. Which means I have to create an institution. Okay. Now, what do I create the institution for? What does it do? So during my years in the industry, and then having maintained my connect with industry and having lots of friends more on the engineering and the R&D and the design side, the one area where I saw a gap in the Indian automobile industry is the area of design. Okay. Today we are pretty world class when it comes to manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, service. Okay, when I were to look at hardcore areas like production engineering, okay, vehicle integration, we are world class. We are truly, truly world class. Okay. The one area where we need to be world class is design. Because I strongly believe that manufacturing only gets you revenues, design gets you valuation. Okay. Why Apple is what is Apple today is because of the design, not because it is assembled in China or India or Puerto Rico or Burkina Faso. That doesn't matter at all. What matters is designed in California. Okay. It's that design ethos. And this design is not just the physical design, it's also the, let's say, the software design, the interface design. So it's the experiential design that Apple has created, which is why it is valued where it is valued today. So for the Indian automobile industry, for the industry to be valued as a truly, truly world-class industry, we have to work on design. Okay. We haven't worked on design all these years, not for any other reason. It's just that the industry was evolving.
But I mean, we have had Indian companies product, and they have had some good design. So why do you say that?
Absolutely. So what you're saying is absolutely right. Here, let me take an example of cricket, okay, which is our biggest religion possibly. There was an India in 1983 that won the World Cup. Okay. The team didn't actually know it was going to win the World Cup. But there was some supreme individual talents that won the World Cup. Okay. So it's a team made of individually supremely talented people. Okay, who possibly before they went to England did not have a cohesive goal and a mission. Their mission was to go and play. But there was one man, Kapil Dev Nikhanj, who said, we need to not just play, but we need to go and win. Which other people found quite amusing to start with. But later they realized, oh man, this can be reality. Now that was also a cricket team which won the World Cup. We've had a cricket team which has won this World Cup, the last World Cup. The last World Cup was won by 15 supremely talented players. Okay, and if you were to have 3 World Cups happening concurrently, India would have supplied 3 teams with a very, very high probability of all 3 teams winning the World Cups. That is what I need to create, which is I need to create a pipeline of design talent, which is what the IPL has done. Yeah. The IPL's biggest contribution to me is creating a pipeline of talent for the country.
So, okay. How much of this talent is needed by Indian automobile industry?
See,
because even today, as we speak, cars are getting designed; they're coming out in the market. So, what is the demand for such a project?
As I said, this entire thing and the planning has been an outside in. So when you talk to a key designer or design head in any automotive company, he or she would tell you that I take these fresh graduates out of the design schools. Then we need to actually spend a good 18 to 24 months in making them come to speed with what is the actual hardware and the software and the thinking in design. Okay. Now we as professionals, do we spend our time training them, which we need to? or do we spend our time on our projects? Because we are not too many. We're just a few. I mean, a Maruti also being the largest car manufacturer would have what? 300, 350 designers, not more than that. Because and the automobile there's interiors, there is exterior, there's a lot going in for the four-wheeler. Okay, not so much for the two-wheeler, but for the four-wheeler and for commercial vehicles, there's a lot going, right? So we know we need to train these guys. Okay, otherwise they are not productive from day one.
So you mean to say that there are design schools in the country already. So those design students need to be retrained, almost spend another session, almost another semester, more than semester, another course almost, because 24 months is another course almost.
So it's
to enter automobile design industry.
So no, they can still enter, which they are doing now.
I mean, enter, no, as in become proficient at it.
Exactly. So to be proficient, this is like when I did my graduation in economics, I did not become an economist. Yeah. Okay. I would have had to go to a Delhi school or a JNU or possibly go out and do my master's and my PhD to be accepted that, okay, you have the wherewithal to be an economist. It's the same with the graduates in design. They're all graduates in design. Okay, but they're not, so you need a master's course. So the school is only a master's course in design.
Okay.
This is not a graduate course in design. Okay. So this is typically, like the European concept of the finishing schools that we have, either in couture or in cuisine. So this is like a finishing school in design, which selects just 25 students every year. Oh. Okay, from the large pool of graduates.
Design
graduates. And finishes them into highly productive, design professionals from day one. That is the purpose of the school.
Okay, very specific.
It's very, very specific.
And masters.
So I am not in competition with an NID. I am actually complementary to an NID. Okay, I am not in competition with IIT Mumbai IDC.
Okay, now from here on, how many job opportunities will come about in automobile design? Because, the world is changing fast. We are getting globalized and yet becoming a little bit more restricted. So what is the job opportunity there?
See, every year, the Indian automobile industry, just for the studios here, whether you are an automaker, or whether you are a studio that does work for the automakers, they end up taking around 250 to 300 students every year. Okay. What we are going to give them is 25 students, let's say fully prepared. Right. So the Indian automobile industry would continue to need that infusion of at least 150, 200 students every year. Okay, given the scale of the work, the nature of the work, given the fact that, for example, over the last 5 years, now we are talking about SDV, software-derived vehicles or software-designed vehicles. Does that mean the physical part goes away? No.
Yeah.
Okay, even after you do your software-derived vehicles or software-designed vehicles, you need to do the clay model. Okay, because at the end of the day, a leading designer who's now part of the school, he told me, Avik, there's something very interesting. Come to think of it. You're designing 3D vehicles, which you see on a 2D screen. Yeah. Okay. So SDV helps, SDV works, but not completely in isolation. So you would have to create a clay model. May not be a 1:1, but a scale, to at least see what those proportions actually look like. Right? So jobs are becoming complex. Okay? The curriculum or the skill sets are rapidly changing. And that is what the school would bring. Because when you and I were doing graduation, any college has some 15, 16, 20 courses in graduation. Okay? Now, is the college equally good in all those courses? No. Different colleges are famous for certain subjects, right? This is going to be only dedicated to automobile design.
Okay. Now, you mentioned SDV, but what about AI and its impact on design? Don't you think
AI would definitely help.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely help. It's already helping. Okay. And what's happening is the more you use generative AI, your inputs just keep getting better. Right. But you must always remember the input the AI gives you today is of what it knew just 1 minute back. It doesn't read your mind. Okay. You may create something very different 1 minute hence. That becomes part of AI because AI captures it. Right? So if you really want to create path-breaking design, if you really want to create design that people sit back and say, oh, wow. Okay. Or they say, this is so quintessentially Indian. I love it. Okay. AI wouldn't know it, but AI would know it after you've done it. So AI is basically to help you clear out your initial thinking, right? And also to tell you what all has been done.
Yeah.
Okay. AI is not able to predict what is going to happen tomorrow. There will be machines which will predict that. Okay. And possibly at the end, there will be a time when machines will take over men. Right. And H.G. Wells would finally be celebrating. Okay. But till then, AI has to be used as a tool. So it's like a zaria, as we say,
Yeah.
to help you design better.
Yeah. Okay, now I want to ask you, last few years, lots of startups have started from India. Indian companies have launched many products. What do you think is happening in Indian automobile designing? And what are those companies that are standing out for you that, okay, these guys are doing good work?
To me, the ones that are actually trying to take a stand and be visually different and experientially different, they are the ones who are winning, and they are the ones who will keep winning. Okay. Now, so if I were to take, there are lots of people doing great work, but if I were to take Ather as an example, okay, Ather, to me, it's a wonderful example of what a startup can be in the automotive space. Okay, a great example. I would even take an example of a brand like Altigreen, okay, or Euler. They are doing deep work. The depth in what you do is really going to hold you in good stead. Because the depth does not lie only in the depth of skill, but the depth of adaptability. Okay, design tomorrow and life tomorrow is actually going to be about agile design, agile thinking. Okay, so I need to have the depth to be agile in my thinking, right? I need to have the capability of debunking my own emotional baggage to create something new. And that's what these startups are doing. Okay, then I'll take the example of Mahindra, right? Now, the 6 and the 9, does everybody love them? Maybe, I'm sure Pratap and Ajay wants everybody to love them. But I'm sure some of them don't love the 6 and the 9, but you cannot deny or ignore the 6 and the 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what is so important.
They're radical.
You're radical. You're taking a stand, right? And the one thing I would actually tell both Pratap and Ajay, they're very good friends, that, and they obviously being designers, they know it, but even to, let's say someone like Mr. Jejurikar, I would tell him, sir, don't expect volumes from here.
But they are actually getting volumes too.
We need to see this 12 months from now.
Yeah.
Okay. 12 months from now, don't expect volumes from here. Okay. But expect your image. Because this product, or the 6 or the 9, is not about volumes. If you can get volumes out of disruption, awesome. Will it be sustainable? it typically
It's not.
is not, right? So Mahindra is doing some great work, okay? And they're really standing up for what the Indian automobile industry can be. Maruti, look at the way Maruti has its own nice sweet pace of doing things, and that to me is very important, not just because it's my alma mater, okay, but I love the way it thinks. It never thinks in jerks. Okay, it's always thinking on a very, very
Linear line.
smooth line, a very smooth line. And you thinking it's a linear line, it's not a linear line. If you see it 35,000 feet from now, it's actually a curve. They're going through the curve, right? But they will not make the people around them think it's a curve. You will end up thinking it's linear, right? To me, it's the wonderful mixture of, let's say, the Indian culture and the Japanese culture. Okay, linear thinking is typically Occidental, which is a yes or a no.
Okay.
The Oriental thinking is always the scope for something called maybe, right? So Oriental thinking is circular thinking. Life is in a circle, right? Society is in a circle. Everything is circular, right? That's how we think, and that's how Maruti thinks. Okay, so the kind of stuff that they're doing now, okay, that you see, they are not revolutionary, but they're evolutionary, because Maruti basically says, my larger job is to continue democratizing mobility in the country. Okay, that's a job that I took upon. I took upon that responsibility in 1981 when I was created, when I was formed. Okay, I have to continue doing that. Yeah, my promises can keep changing, but my purpose remains the same, which is to democratize mobility. Therefore, for Maruti, you're always catering to 80% of the market.
Yeah.
And 80% of the market is never revolutionary in thinking. It's always evolutionary in thinking. So somebody has to do work for that market.
Yeah. Which is not very radical, which
It's
confirms.
not very radical, exactly. So you'll come out with something like the Francs, you'll come out with something like the Grand Vitara, you'll do the E-Vitara.
And they're never the first to launch a body style.
You cannot. As a market leader, it's both your responsibility and your burden.
Yeah.
Okay? You see Toyota. Is Toyota always the first? It is not. Okay? But there's a large part of the world which waits for Toyota's version of that body style. Or Toyota's version of that technology, which is exactly the same as Maruti's role in India.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are still around 50% of the country that says, I'm going to wait for Maruti's version of an electric vehicle. Okay, or Maruti's version of an SUV. Now, it may not be the most radical looking, like the Brezza. It's not radical. But are most of us radical? We are not. And we hate radicals, no, in society.
Okay. Now, one last question from you about the design school. By when can we expect it to actually you to start the whole process?
Well, the first batch, as per our plan, should join in May of 2026.
Okay.
Okay, so still a year from now. Now, I just hope to raise all the money by that, inshallah. Quite frankly.
So
raising money is so difficult. Okay, everybody tells you it's a great idea, but get the money from somewhere else. And these are people who are rich. This is an industry which is making huge profits, but they still tell you that come back, get the money from somewhere else.
Why? Is it because it's is it a return problem, a return on investment problem, or is it an idea problem, or is it is it an availability of funds problem? What is the biggest problem?
Availability of funds is never a problem, because the funds I'm asking for is gets into possibly 4 points after decimal, or even more than that. Okay, for the industry. It's not about the idea, because everybody says it's a great idea and we must do it, right? And these are the biggest people in the industry. Right? I hope they were not lying to me. And I know they were not lying to me. It's all a question of will I take that call? Okay. It's not a question of what's in it for me, because here we are a not-for-profit school, because it's XLRI.
Okay.
So it's not for profit. So you'll be giving it as a donation.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
There are no returns.
That's the thing.
Okay. There's always this thing of let someone else do it and then I will follow. That to me possibly also sums up a certain part of the mindset of the industry. Let someone else do the disruption, I will follow. Let someone else try the new technology, I will follow. Let someone else try something new in retail, I will follow.
Yeah.
Then let someone else, give battery as a service, I will follow.
So you actually need radicals, revolutionaries to back you up.
You need people who actually believe in my conviction. Okay, to come up and say, okay, Avik, and mind you, I am financially invested in the project. Okay, so I'm walking the talk. And all I'm telling them is, give me the same money. Whatever I'm putting in, give me the same. Okay, even that is becoming a bit of an issue. There are a few, very few, who've actually shown very, very active, deep interest in the project. Therefore, I'm still hopeful that we will have the first batch joining in the May of 2026.
Because because it is a donation, because it's an educational institute and it's a XLRI. That's maybe a big problem there. Because if it was a investment, I'm sure it would have been easier for you.
I don't know. I think because it's XLRI, it should have been easier.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's because we have CSR funds, should have been easier. Right? And also because the money that I'm asking for from each is not much at all. Should have been very easy. I guess I just need to be a bit more patient.
Yeah.
Right? I need to keep knocking the same doors again and again and again and again. And then there's one door has to open. Okay, then I hope the others see the belief that organization has in our conviction.
So
and follow.
as we stand today, will the batch start in May of 2026?
Yes, right now I am working towards that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But you will, to sustain it for a longer term, you'll need some more support.
Oh yes, I mean even to start it in 2026, I would need support.
Okay.
You see, because what we're doing is, and as I explained, if this is going to be a finishing school, so what we're building is we're actually building a real world studio. So this is a fully functional studio that is being built with capabilities of doing 1:1 clay modeling and capabilities of creating working prototypes. So outside of a few automakers also,
Yeah.
this will end up being India's most advanced design studio for automobile design. Okay, and that needs money.
Yeah.
I'm not doing classroom teaching. Okay, XLRI has enough classrooms. I could have just taken one classroom, only 25 students. And this is not classroom teaching. This is getting some of the best practitioners of design from across the world to come and invest their time with the students in the studio, making them work on the latest hardware and software, and also understand the concept of design management, so that when they go out, they are truly productive from day one.
Okay.
That needs money. Okay. But I'm still hopeful that I'll start in May 2026.
All right, Avik, thank you so much and best
Thank
of
you.
luck. I hope you get all the support that you need and we have a truly Indian automobile design institute soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your time and your patience.
No, I had a fun chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you very much.